secrets to generate revenue through sales, licensing, and collaborations. The session also highlights the significance of IP valuation in driving innovation within the digital economy. To guide us through this insightful session, I am delighted to introduce our esteemed moderator, Dr. Vinita Jindal from BIRAC. She holds a doctorate in plant sciences and has received several awards including the DST Women Scientist Scholarship, a Registry Technology Transfer Protocol RTTP professional. She specializes in patent management, technology transfer and innovation. Welcome, ma'am. Next, I am pleased to introduce Dr. C.K. Sehgal from Sehgal IPR Services. He holds 25 plus years of experience in research and development, regulatory, marketing and IPR across chemicals, petrochemicals, polymers and pharma sectors. His insights will be invaluable to our discussion today. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Ms. Pranita Pathak from Sine IIT Bombay. She leads the healthcare startup incubation and mentors 50 plus startups under the BioNest program. She specializes in government engagement with DBT BIRAC with a PhD in environmental biotechnology. She has expertise in research and development and environmental impact assessments. Welcome, ma'am. We are also joined by Dr. Sayali P. from Gharda Chemicals. Doctor is an intellectual property consultant with a PhD in pharmaceuticals and holds an MTech in bioprocess technology. With 18 years of experience in pharma, she is a registered Indian patent agent and a key player in multidisciplinary teams. We welcome you, ma'am. Lastly, we welcome Mr. Satyendra Vyas from Tata Consultancy Services. Mr. Vyas heads the IP program at TCS, focusing on strategy, planning, protection, and monetization. With 26 plus years of experience, he has led large transformational programs across various industries. We welcome you, sir. Now I'd like to hand over the moderation for this session to Dr. Vinita, IP monetization strategies in the digital economy.
Thank you all, and I know this is the last session and most of the people might be having a flight to catch, but yeah, I think this session is going to be very interesting. IP monetization strategies in the digital economy. So just after the lunch we had one more session on the IP strategy, value creation with the value extraction. So this is I can take this session as an extended part of IP strategy for the value creation with the value extraction. So when we talk about the IP monetization, so it is of course extracting the value out of the intangible assets. So in this session, basically we will focus more on what are the different techniques or the tools to monetize the IP, and especially when we talk about the IP monetization, it is not just making or extracting the value of the intangible assets, but also it has also been noticed like how IP monetization also supports or fosters the collaboration, strategic partnership when we take a deep dive into the IP monetization. Because what we feel or we have noticed that IP monetization, it's not a single way, only the business community cannot do all alone, where the universities and the scientists also plays a critical role. And one more critical aspect which we would like to touch upon is the IP valuation, because if we talk about the IP monetization, but we don't know the value of the IP monetization will not be able to, we will not be able to do it. So this session would focus more on the collaborative aspect, what are the different techniques of the IP monetization, and the other important thing is how we can think about or what would be the possible ways of monetizing the trade secrets and or the unprotected IP. So with this, I would like to, we have a wonderful panel where we have a diverse set of people from the different background. So maybe let's start with the Mr. Vyas. So Mr. Vyas, yeah. So before I go directly to the IP monetization, if I ask you like when we talk about the IP and the digital economy, so in your perspective or while working with the TCS, what role exactly IP plays when we talk about in the digital economy, and how the digital economy is impacting the IP protection?
So one of the key things to notice is in a digital economy, things progress very fast, right? So what we see is if you look at any patent, its life cycle of 20 years, where is the value that you derive maximum from the patent? And we see that in the digital space, in the computer space and the technology space that we work in, it's primarily the first 5 to 7 years is where maximum of the value of the patent is there. Post that, there's a lot of depreciation that happens and it may become potentially non-usable beyond 7-8 years time frame. So given this scenario, there are a lot of complexities that come into play. You want to get to the market fast, you want to use it for and maximizing the value, get it as early as possible. The more time you delay, the less likely of the window of opportunity for you to maximize the valuation remains. So when we look at those aspects, one of the key things that we have noticed is as we build our product, right, TCS primary focuses on IP valuation in a primary one way where we file patent and then we see that the patent is implemented in some form of a software product that we leverage and go to market with. So our software product keeps enhancing as and more patent that we've built on, and then it continues to play a larger role, whereas the way in which that patent gets implemented is inside the product. So through the product, through the licensing, the patent is sold into the marketplace, and the market is able to leverage and utilize it and drive revenue for the organization. Now, some things that happen parallelly with that is in the IT space, especially in the computer area, you find that it is not just you who is doing certain things. You also collaborate, and the collaboration happens across multiple spectrums. It could be with your partners, it could be with a third party, a startup company that you go with, and then there's also a collaboration that happens when you build certain things on top of somebody else's IP, and together we go with that into the marketplace. So there are a lot of possibilities on collaboration, there are a lot of possibilities, and maximizing of the value within the first 7-8 years is where we focus on, and that helps us drive overall strategy in the IP space, as well as look at what are the various focus areas for us. So because given that it's a short cycle window in which we maximize our profit, there's always a focus on what are the new things that we need to keep focusing on, what are the new areas of IP creation that I need to continue focusing on, and that drives my strategy year to year. So that will be a very brief summary of how IP plays a very important role in our corporate strategy, how it helps us drive the roadmap of various products that we have, and also it helps drive the overall collaboration that we have, whether it's with our partners, academic institutions, and so on. So all of this together helps us drive the overall IP strategy for a large organization like TCS.
Thank you, Mr. Vyas. So my question, the same question to all the panel members, so I would request Dr. Saidi to comment on this.
Right. So I wouldn't be speaking on behalf, as what we do in my organization, but I would like to just place some general thoughts. So I pick up two words from what Mr. Vyas has said, collaboration and time frame. Now what's happening currently is the technology is changing at a very rapid pace. And there are situations where, something what is relevant today becomes redundant for probably a company tomorrow. Well, when one generates IP, that does not mean that we just dump it somewhere. What all I'm trying to say is, take this collaboration to the next level. Why not think about patent pools for technology which might be redundant for a company, but might be useful for somebody else. Well, there are patent pools at least in the medical or the vaccine area, but they are not well established yet. why not extend that to maybe the sustainability goals? Extend it to probably other technical areas also, so that the innovation which has been created does not go waste. Ultimately, it's the people who have put in their efforts to create the innovation, and we really need to make use of it at some point. So this, in such sense, probably there could be scope for cross-licensing also, or also looking at what could be then monetized by one company, or it could be made to a larger public use. So depending on what technology one is looking at, could use those patent pools.
Thank you. So, Pranita, if you can take up this question, because you work with a lot of startups and you are located within the premises of IIT Mumbai. So, being a part of the IIT Mumbai and Sign, when you work with startups, so what is your take on this question?
Thank you. Thank you, Vinita, and thank you, GIPC, for having me here, because I'm from the other side of the table. I represent academia and incubator. So I'll briefly introduce Sign, because IIT Bombay is the well-known name, but probably not everyone is aware about Sign. So Sign is a society for innovation and entrepreneurship, and we recently celebrated our 20th anniversary. So we have been here in this ecosystem for 20 years, when there was no precedence how incubators should guide startup or work with them, or facilitate the translation of any academic generated IPs into ventures and monetize them. So there have been a lot of policies and all that which Sign has been involved to work with government to develop. So Sign has supported so far around 250 plus startup, more than 1,000 plus innovators, 10,000 plus employment has been generated. We have one IPO, first IPO spin out from Academia Link Incubator. We have one unicorn, and there are many success stories as well. And to come to this, to your point, Vinita, I'll be focusing more on monetization through licensing and startup ventures. So mostly what happens is that, in IIT Bombay, if any technology or any IP where there is a potential to translation that into any venture, there is now policies to create startup or faculty members to be a part of that as well. Some of the general numbers which I would like to mention is that, how startups are contributing to this digital economy is that, digital economy constitutes approximately 20% of the Indian GDP, and it is substantially increased 4.5% in last decade. And by 2026, it's expected to grow 20%. And out of that, startup, if we consider startup who are contributing to that, major sector is IP, IT sector, followed by healthcare and life science sector. And there are certain initiatives has gone into it to supporting this as well, to promote this. Before that, I'll also mention some of the startup, the startup in financial year 2023, they have contributed to the $140 billion economy, which is projected to reach $1 trillion by 2030. So that is going to be the startup share in this economy. And startup funding from DPIIT, as they said, it has up to $155 billion in 2024 calendar year. So those are some of the government initiatives. And with that, Indian startup ecosystem is valued over $349 billion. So all these number are possible because of lot of support which is coming from government schemes. Some of them are very good schemes from BIRAC, DBT, BIRAC, DST. Corporate who are contributing to the CSR, contribution to improve infrastructures, and with the robust digital payment system, digital business model, which have attracted a lot of investors, which has given a boost really in these sectors. While coming to digital economy, there are a lot of startups who are working in this area. Yesterday only some of the panel members mentioned that 35,000 scientific literature has been filed in 2023 in Jain AI. So we have also been in the IIT Bombay, a lot of startup works in AI assisted solution, semiconductors. There are a lot of tangible and intangible solutions or technology we are AI assisted. Some of those are blockchains, which improve the traceability in agri sector and healthcare sector as well. Some of the data processing software, image diagnostic tool has contributed a lot in healthcare sectors. Some of the omics related technologies which we have seen a lot in COVID, where genomics has played a magnificent role. Along with that, a lot of proteomics, metabolomics, all these are technology are somewhere a lot of digitization, data transfer, data management, data analytics plays a lot of role. And these are the technologies are playing a crucial role in digital economy. So these are some of the example how academia and startup are playing a role in this.
So do you also see, if I can take one more question, so do you also see a collaboration between the startups and the IIT Mumbai scientists? Because I have seen there are few startups which have been spun off from the IIT Mumbai. So they are a collaborative effort, or how they have come up? Like we were discussing about the Immuno Act, one of the party product.
Okay, just to mention about, thank you Vinita for mentioning that. It's one of the first CAR-T or gene-based technology for cancer treatment, which is, there are only 3 or 4 technologies all over the world. And this particular startup is able to bring down the cost tenfold. So currently one dose in US, which costs around 4 to 5 crores, they can provide it in 40 lakhs. I still understand 40 lakhs is very expensive, but there are a lot of efforts they are making to bring it down. But that's also a first step. It is one of the first CDSCO approved test in India. Now this technology is available here. And this particular faculty member who joined in 2012, IIT Bombay, of course before that he also worked on that technology. Almost 10 years later, they were able to incorporate company, have their for phase 1 trial. That's a magnificent jump in terms of technology development and translating. Now there is a lot of collaborative effort. First of all, the faculty member was very focused translating something and making it available in India for the population, right? That was the first motivation he had, and then he also motivated his students to be a part of this startup. The other motivation was, he was very open to have, people from outside to collaborate. So there is a business, professional from business world, he onboarded on his startup. And the third thing is the Laurus Lab, which stepped into in providing the fund. So they funded around 150 crore, 160 crores so far to this startup, where they are now able to translate, and they have completely cured 50 patients. So blood cancer was the first cancer they picked up. Now they are moving to solid cancer. So these are some of the examples how they will be contributing socially as well as economically.
Thank you, thank you. So coming to Dr. Sehgal, what is your take on the IP, the role IP is playing in the digital economy, how it is impacting not only for the IP thing and IP monetization as well?
Yeah, if you look at this IP is one aspect which contributes not only with the companies who generate and use IPOG in their respective technologies, but also in the country's economy to great extent. If you look at today, one of the biggest factor of very strong US economy today is innovation. And this innovation is protected by IP, and they are generating out of ample number of this revenue. I will just show with some numbers rather than just If we look at it, why monetization is required? As you know, patent creation, getting a patent is not an easy task. It does involve a lot of revenue in respect of various resources. manpower, finance, etc. Therefore, companies, as a matter of fact, develop technology, get patents to sell their products and barring others to use that technology. However, if you look at it, these research institutions, can I have next slide? Yeah. If you look at it, government institutions and research institutions and academic institutions, they do get a aid only from the government, and their main source of earning other than government aid is monetizing their technology patents. If you look at some of the budget, you look at the US government itself. In US, the requested budget for R&D in 2025 was $200 billion, and proposed budget for 25 is mentioned out there. For financial year, because there has been increase. But if you look at the data, which I'll be just presenting later part of a deliberation, resources earning through monetization of patents is much more than what federal government gives aid to them. And that is one rather reason that they have been able to create so many resources on their own, which otherwise they cannot manage through the government aid, and also generate additional manpower. Now let us look at India. In India, CSIR is the biggest, I would say, this government organization who manages large number of research laboratories in various locations in India. If you look at it, annual budget of Indian government is mentioned out there, and in US compared to the $1 billion, it is only 8-9 million in 2022, and it has got 39 research institutions and 3 innovation centers like Bangalore, I guess, like Bangalore. If you look at it, resources which the patents generate, resources which is generated by the monetization of patents by the CSL lottery is given out there in the next slide, please. You see sources in 2026, it is rupees 727.3 crores, and whereas from private sector, but whenever I said the private sector is only 302 crore, and from other sources it is 425. It is much less than whatever their aid they are getting from the government is not meeting their regular requirement. Therefore, there is an ample need for creating patent awareness among scientists in the research institutions. How patents rather can be considered as a product of their efforts, and they rather have to see whatever patent is generated that has a value, that adds business to the industry in the respective technology domain, and it has a value, and accordingly they should plan their research activities. And it does give over a period of time, it says how much deficient it is vis-a-vis whatever aid they are getting and whatever they are spending. Now this is next. Now we have seen revenues for licensing. Like Madam from IIT is there, and IIT government spends a lot of money on Indian Institute of Technologies in India. You look at whatever the revenues they have generated out of selling their intellectual property. I've got only 2012 figure which is out there. Madam can add more. And though there has been a real surge in number of patents, somehow in research institution, patents are taken in quantitative manner, not in qualitative manner. They say we have got this number of patents. There is no value of patent unless until you have got a buyer for that. Therefore, whatever patents are to be generated by research institution or academic institution, they have to look at the quality that it is a product for which there is a buyer. Accordingly, values can be arrived, monetization is useful. What are the type of licensing through which patent monetizations can patent monetization can be rather achieved. Let us say for the exclusive. When we were discussing in the earlier panel discussion, exclusive is that you sell your patent exclusively to a party, that it becomes his or her property, and it is they who have all the right to use it in whatever form they want and do further research on that subject matter. That also has to be part of the agreement. It gives them entitlement that they can do the further research on the same subject matter to create more patents and create value for themselves. And second is non-exclusive, that you want to give it only for an exclusive jurisdiction. If you have got the patent in many jurisdictions, you have got a multiple family members of that patent. However, you give only for specific jurisdiction to them, and accordingly they can use it. Second is voluntary licensing. Voluntary licensing, because there have been some case studies I will just touch upon later, that many companies, they say that we don't have to use the patent, or this patent has got certain weaknesses and this can be opposed and can be revoked. For that reason, they offer voluntary licenses to the parties who can use it for their business. And for that, there has to be a specific agreement, terms and conditions in respect of royalty, etc. Second is compulsory licensing. Compulsory licensing is something which is in accordance with the Article 31 of TRIPS agreement. Accordingly, India, there is a section 84 which provides the provision, gives an opportunity to the party to go for compulsory licensing. I will take it later how it has to go. Third is infringement. If at all somebody has a patent and they feel their competitor is infringing, they are using whatever they are using, whether it's the process or product, is the same product as they have got and similar to the process. Therefore, they can file an infringement and they can force licensing on the infringer. They can enforce licensing, they can damage it. There have been some case studies, recent case studies in India itself. This is a case between FMC Corporation and Netco, wherein they said the process being used by Netco falls within the claims of the party, therefore infringing, and they should pay the damages to them. However, under doctrine of equivalence, this was denied by the court of law. They say whatever process is being used by Netco does not fall within the scope, therefore they were denied and they could not get any revenue out of their effort. Next slide, please. Second is by far versus the laboratory. This also is a non-infringement. This is under product by process claim, wherein they have claimed a product, but that product in the same claim was made by a specific process. This is a very disputable subject matter. There have been many cases in different jurisdictions worldwide where this has been being argued. In India, somehow, for some reason I do not know, court has said yes, it's an infringement. Though the party which has been making it is not using the process, because there is a all elements rule in the patent law, wherein say infringement is there only if all the elements of the claims are being practiced. However, in this case, defendant argued, though I am making that product, but the process I am using is different than whatever is being claimed in that product by process claim. As the product is same, based on that factor, this plaintiff argued upon and emphasized, and he could get equal judgment in their favor. Maybe the matter may go further on that, because there are many case studies wherein they have been denied. This is another case, patent infringement against Micromax over several essential patents related to GSM, etc. In this case, there has been an infringement, and Allison has won the case, and they have got money. They have got these infringement damages from the party. The figure is not mentioned out there, and they said because because Allison has given a voluntary license to many other parties in India, for which there has been a voluntary agreement, licensing agreement, and licensing agreement, the royalty detail, etc. has been detailed. The court had said that the party has to the Mathematics has to rather take a lessons from the Edison and pay the damages in respect of this royalty to them. This is another mode of monetization. They have won quite a lot of money out of that. This is Maharaja Appliance Limited, Indian company, who has been making a kettle, electric kettle. This company had a patent on a temperature controller, and there has been a rather case study there wherein the court decided, after going through all the arguments by the defendant and plaintiff, they said yes, whatever is being used by the Maharaja Appliances is falls within the scope of the claim, and they have given a 50 lakh rupees damages to the Strix Limited. And this is another very good mode of monetization. They got the money out of that. Next. Another, I just said in the beginning that there is a provision for compulsory licensing under the script segment 31, and nobody can say that Indian patent law is non-compliance with the TRIPS agreement. That provides a provision to enact legislation, and accordingly it has been done. There has been a case, wonderful case in India about Laxover, which is a bias product for cancer treatment. They have been making in India, and because TRIPS agreement article 27 also entitles companies to import product based on their technology into India from any other place, and there's the respective member states, they have to respect that under article 27. They have been importing it, they have not been making it in India, so that it is not being made in India. As per Indian patent law, they have to make it in India after 3 years of the grant of the patent. They should start, but they can under article 27 they can argue no, we are importing it and they should be protected. However, looking at the requirements in the Indian market, TRIPS agreement also provides a provision under paragraph 5 of the Paris Convention and Doha Convention. Any member state has the right to enact legislation based on their national health emergencies. Accordingly, and it also says it is the member state who has to decide what is the health emergencies. It is not to be rather imposed on them by any other developed country. Accordingly, it was agreed upon the requirement, the whatever price is being charged for this medicine in India. You can look at it. 2.8 lakhs worth medicines per month person has to spend for getting that medicine. And availability in India, though they were importing into India, but they were not having a sufficient quantity that everybody could get it. Only 2% of the requirement could be met through the import. Accordingly, NATCO was offering vis-a-vis 2.8 lakhs per month at rupees 8,800 per month. Look at the difference. And then, to counter that, buyer said, we will give 600 patients per year free medicines. They rather try to argue to great extent that they could oppose this compulsory licensing this thing, and they were offered 2-3 months free medicines to them. But somehow, court did not agree, and they said it is a requirement for Indian patients to have this medicine. They must have access to this medicine at affordable price. So they decided, they forced buyer to give compulsory license to the NATCO at 6% royalty, which later, when they appealed to IPAB, Intellectual Property Appellate Board, it got increased to 7%, and later Supreme Court, matter was taken to the Supreme Court, and they stuck to that. Matter went to Supreme Court. This is another way, monetization, yes, by compulsory licenses, but not to the extent this patent holder was expecting. Instead, they could have gone for voluntary license, and they might, out of the discussion, would have argued for the higher one, maybe 10% or 15%, instead of limiting to only 7%, which was imposed on them by Supreme Court of India. This is another way of monetization. Next please. There have been quite a few other cases of compulsory licensing in India. Need not go over it is very time consuming, in which they have been denied, they have not been accorded. They have not been accorded. Next slide please. This is another saxagliptin, which is a diabetic product by AstraZeneca, and this is another product for which compulsory licensing was applied for, and here also the import price of one against the price of rupees 48 per tablet, and this request was dismissed on 12th of August 2015 by the government for some reasons. I don't know my detail, because there has been a lot of pressure by the US government and Indian government also. When the companies out there, they took up the matter to their government that this is something that we are being impacted adversely. We are being impacted. Yeah. Next slide, please. There is another provision for compulsory licensing, section 92, wherein the government decides whether we have to give it or not, and other party who want, they have to just take it from the government. They don't have to rather go to the party who is the patent holder. Like many other cases there, because of the time constraint, this is a matter which can carry on unabated for hours and hours together. I don't want to continue, but this is what I want to emphasize is, this monetization is a very important factor. It does contribute in a big manner to the country's economy, which later on it does have figures. And I'll just show one thing. Please carry on. Please go. Just one slide. But it's a very important slide. Further. Yeah. Let me tell you what is the value of the IP. It is amazing. We are sitting in a 7-star property here. You may say that it has a value of about $600 million or $700 million. Look the value of the patent. One patent of Northwestern University was sold for $3.61 million. One slide before this. $4 billion. One patent was sold. Yeah, $3.1 billion. This Northwestern University had sold the patent. Look at the New York University, $1 billion. The patent value monetization of resources it generates is in billions and billions. And likewise, you can see out here, all academic institutions. I think IIT person should rather look at this figure and push the IITs that what value it can generate. And they should plan our research accordingly to generate such product as a patent as a product which has a value. And likewise, there are so many other data which reflects what value the patent have and how much value it can generate for the patentee, whether it's a company or an academic institution. Thank you very much for the patient hearing. My apologies, I could not complete all these things.
Thank you, Dr. Sehgal. So I have quick questions, two quick questions, first to Mr. Vyas and then to Dr. Sehgal. So, Mr. Vyas, you talked about the strategic collaboration, and you also work with the startup, which I believe. So, when you work with the startups, so how you help them for the IP monetization, or how they leverage on the TCS partnership?
I mean, when we look at the partnership with startups or even academic institutions, we go with a very specific set of boundaries, right? And that is how our agreements are built with them. So with a startup, we may say, okay, your product or your area of expertise will be leveraged with our overall solution, and we go to the market with them with having a clear definition of what is the royalty they would get from our projects and so on. And accordingly, the go-to-market strategy would be defined. And we look at a certain academic institution, we may want to look at, I come with my IP, they have their own background IP. What is the area in which we want to do the derivation, the derived IP that we want to look at? Very clear boundaries, like timeline based as well as boundary based, and see that we focus on that, see the outcomes, and then accordingly have a clear defined again roadmap on who has the commercialization right, who has the ownership rights, and accordingly. So those are some of the various contours that we have with respect to the contracts and how we kind of work with a partner ecosystem. We work with the academic institution and also with some of the existing strong product companies as well. I mean, TCS goes with IBM to the market. TCS goes with the Oracle to the market, right? We do lot more alliances and stuff like that. So there is lot more clarity into what is it that we want to go together with them with, and then accordingly have definitions on how we would want to take the outcome of those projects and see how best that can be distributed across us and them. So that's a very, very short, brief summary of a multitude of things that we do just to ensure that the commercialization is beneficial to both us and our partners.
Okay. Dr. Sairi, there was a thing like we talk about the IP monetization. So what about the monetization of the unprotected IP, which has not yet been protected or kept as a confidential or the trade secret? And we also, when we talk about the IP monetization, so we also transfer the know-how. So what about how do you, see or perceive these unprotected IP monetization?
Right. So, as Mr. Vyas mentioned about collaboration, so there could be collaboration within parties, they get things to the table. Along with that, there would be collaboration of IP rights also. And when I say IP rights, it does not essentially mean patents. It could mean, along with that, trade secrets or know-how, trademarks, copyrights, everything bundled together. So, a product itself would have multiple facets and multiple things bundled together. So trade secrets or know-how becomes an integral part of the product, which should be transferred with caution, because generally you cannot just transfer paper knowledge, but it has to have a transfer of insights also. It should be done carefully, but I'm sure as we all know that there are no as such laws for that in India or elsewhere, but it would be an emerging thing of the future where there could be probably something carved out specifically when there is knowledge transfer. And if you really want to monetize what is being created, it should go along with the unprotected part also. Yet, it should have some kind of protection, let me put it that way.
So basically, when you transfer or when you sell out your patent, so that means you're talking about transferring or giving all the information which has been kept as confidential or trade secret as a part of the agreement?
Well, it happens when you do a tech transfer, there is knowledge transfer also. So when you transfer knowledge, you really don't measure that I don't say this and I don't say that. Well, it has to be done in some sense, but some things are better be spoken, right? You just let it out. You either do it expressly or you do it with action. So there could be ways by which you could curtail that, but if you have certain laws which could be enacted or maybe provisions which could protect it, it would be great.
Okay. So one last comment from all the panel members on. So as we have seen the India growing as a patent filing is growing in India, as well as the number of patents which have been granted in India is approximately more than 1 lakh. So having these trends in picture, so how do you see, because we have not improved or we have not come to a stage where we can see trends in IP monetization. So what are the challenges you see, or how we can improve the IP monetization part, irrespective of whether we are working in the academic institution or we are working for a corporate sector. So how we can improve the IP monetization trends as well?
Actually, one of the key things that the IPO asks for is for each of the patent, what is the monetization that they have. Now that is very much dependent on a singular patent view that they have. Whereas when you see in some of the product implementation that we have, a product is supported by X number of patents, and the X is a multiplier. It can be of the order of 10, 20 to hundreds of them or thousands of them. So effectively translating that and communicating to the IPO may not have a right way of identifying the valuation of a patent, but there is a lot of tremendous value that this patent seems to be driving in the marketplace.
Dr. Sairi?
So, you really need to know what is the tripping point. what rebates, which patent might be contributing maximum to the technology when you pull it together. That would be one way to look at monetization and also maybe buckle up the value of it.
Pranita?
I'll need 1 minute here, Vinita, just to highlight some of the challenges at academia, because my fellow panelists mentioned and rightly mentioned that a lot of that academic patents which are granted not translates, right? Around 1700 patents granted to across IITs, and very minuscule of that translated. However, there are a lot of initiatives going on right now. So from industry side, sometimes they are not commercializable or not really able to completely get that know-how. They're not sometimes usable, sellable in their product or part of product. So some of these challenges are these IITs are addressing by having Center of Excellences. So we have around 21 Center of Excellences on the campus in various sectors like oil and gas, steel, semiconductor. In fact, in healthcare, we have KCDH, which is digital, which works on digital side of healthcare. Membrane technologies, because we don't have our Indian membranes available for us, which generally increases the price for any product eventually. So a lot of these collaboration efforts where industries are coming up, giving problem statements and working towards that. This is how the challenges we are solving. There is also an investor's perspective when it comes to the startup, funding, having a portfolio of IPs. But these IPs has to be, when it is any academician or any academic spin-out technology they are working on, there should be a friendly policies, IP policies should be there to transfer that tech and all that. So there are also a lot of IP policy improvement has happened. So those are some of the some of the solutions which have academic people are undertaking. But there are a lot of other challenges the startup face in terms of, as Saili mentioned, trade secret. Maintaining those trade secret, being a small, team, and then taking it to the next level. Then there are a lot of challenges from fund side. So when it comes to startup, they want to protect the IP, but protecting any IP, maintaining that IP is really expensive thing for them. Having an allocated fund which help them to support to do that. So I'll also invite the community present here to come forward, make these innovators aware about what are their opportunities, gaps. Right in the beginning when they are making these products, which has to be sellable and commercial, it has to be a commercializable. So these are some of the challenges startup are facing.
Yeah, if you look at it, I give you an example of IBM. If you IBM, one of the major source of earning for IBM was her patent out licensing, the live example. Similarly, I would just like to highlight one aspect. Supposing a company has got a patent in India, their business interest is only in India. Though from business perspective it is fine, however they can consider same technology filing in other countries where they do not have a business interest, but this patent as a product of monetization, rather selling this technology to the competitor where they do not have direct business interest and earn money out of the patent which has been produced as a product by the company.
So, time is up. Do we have time for any question? One question? Okay. So,
Hi, my name is Rupreet and I just have one input to give. Of course, in addition to monetization by way of various collaborations, assignments, licensing, there are different mechanisms present here in our country where you can monetize on your IP. For example, for copyright, there are various societies like IPRS, ISRA, and there are agents like PPL, Nobex, through which an artist can always monetize the work that they're doing. In addition to that, I would say that monetization would not only mean that you earn money, you can also save on money expenditure that you're doing on protecting your IP. So when you register yourself as a startup, Trademark Registry offers you a 50% discount in your registrations. So there are various systems in place at present itself where you can monetize best on your IP and see what your IP brings to the table, and you do it, at the maximum level as much as possible. In addition to that, in the digital era, there are so many mechanisms on the social media platforms as well, whereas these platforms provide you different ways to monetize your products and services and your IPs. You can do it through different ad mechanisms as well. So the present scenario in our country also provides various ways to monetize on your IP and the products and services provided under it. Thank you.
Thank you for the quick comment. So that's all for all the panel members, and thank you all the audience. We can conclude the session. Thank you everyone.
Thank you all for that wonderful panel discussion. To close off day 2's proceedings, I'd like to request Dr. Vinita Jindal from BIRAC to felicitate our panel members. Firstly, Dr. C.K. Sehgal. Next, we have Ms. Pranita from Sign IIT Bombay. We have Dr. Sayali from Kharda Chemicals. And now Mr. Satyendra Vyas from Tata Consultancy Services. I'd like to invite Dr. Agarwal, Honorable Founder, GIPC, to felicitate our moderator, Dr. Vinita Jindal from BIRAC. I request all panel members to assemble for a photograph. Thank you very much. Before we close off for today, we have one last very exciting event happening at hall number 1. We shall be having the corporate corporate award ceremony that will start in 10 minutes. Please gather in hall number 1. Until then, you can be at the refreshments hall. Thank you very much.